just a hack. It's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
As a lot of really older coaches continue on, they eventually get to this point where they're not going to have that same level of impact. And the quality of play on the field regresses. No matter how many good coordinators you have, there are going to be holes that are left on your roster. So the conversation that now needs to be had,
that roster is a little thin.
At what point do you decide, if you're Nick Saban, to retire? Is this the timing? Is he getting passed by better coaches? Not better coaches, younger coaches like Heupel, like Kirby Smart, like maybe whoever takes the Auburn job.
They're very hungry. Here,
hungry?
The other coaches, the younger coaches. Here's the thing. Alabama is one elite wide receiver away from not even being talked about like this. All right, they are. Because when's the last time you saw an Alabama wide receiving core that didn't have that dude on it? They don't have a prime target this year. The team this year, they lost a lot to the draft. They continuously lose a lot and they rebuild. Okay. Trickle down. Now it's your turn. You're a senior. They didn't have a senior be that guy this year. From Julio to Waddle, there's always been somebody in that stretch that you could count on to make a huge play. They don't have that on offense. Jahmyr Gibbs, fantastic talent. Offensive line, always going to be solid. Defense, always going to be solid. Not a very good defense this year. Shocking. But it's 1 year out of the last decade where you're sitting here having this conversation. I don't think Saban's age has a thing to do with it. I think it's just a crop of guys that are not invested, but they're just not there yet. Like they're not, this isn't the team. It's just not the team this year. In previous years, you could argue that they always had the team.
But here's you make a really good point. This team is not up to the caliber of the national championship winning Alabama teams that we've seen over the past decade or more that Saban has been there. I totally agree that them missing a receiver has seriously hindered them when they're facing off against really well-coached defenses. Matt House, I think, is the name of the defensive coordinator for LSU, had one of the best scheme games that I've ever seen. He knew how to confuse Bryce Young, and if anyone was open, he wasn't finding him. He was really effectively pressured. But what is concerning is that this might be, actually, I don't think it might be. This is probably the worst Alabama team that we've seen in a long time.
Since I've since I've understood the concept of college football, this is probably the worst I've seen.
Yeah,
where I've had a passing interest in it.
We are too young to remember the early years of Nick Saban, and he turned the program around very quickly. And from what I understand, that first year was pretty rough for Alabama. But in the span of dominance, this is probably one of the worst teams that he has coached and that he's put out there on the field. And that's why I think that the debate for if he should retire is legitimate, because it gets to a certain point are we just going to see Alabama slowly regress more and more? Because everyone was talking about how last year was a down year for them when, they lost to Georgia and they lost in the national championship game, a game that they probably could have won. And they were supposed to be set up for tremendous success this year. And they took a step back even further. And Georgia, to your point about them losing all of those guys, Georgia lost more guys to the draft and more key defensive players, and their defense has gotten stronger.
They had a couple really good classes. Let me try to explain what this Alabama team is. Okay. The Alabama team is the Italian sandwich. That's what it is. Consistently the best sandwich. Always, if you go into a restaurant, you get an Italian sandwich, you're happy because for the most part, it's good. You got all the meats on it. You got the good bread, the cheese that you like, all of it. You finally went into a deli that didn't make you a good Italian sandwich. It happens very rarely, but this year it happened.
Okay.
This year they didn't have the prosciutto. They didn't have it. They didn't have they didn't have what you preferred on it. They have some backup ham going in instead of the nice thin slices that you want. That is what this team is. Next year, next deli, you're probably going to go in and get a pretty good Italian sandwich.
Okay.
That's probably what you're going to go get.
Here's my counterpoint. It is
the club is better.
No. I love that. I love that analogy, and I like how we're very outside the box with our analogies here on this show. It's like the Italian sandwich, like you're talking about, but the guy who's been making it for the past 15 years, however long, he's been doing a great job. It's always been good. Yeah. Some years it's not been as great, but it's always been really, really good. But now the guy who's making the sandwich is starting to get really sloppy. And there's a lot of mistakes and a lot of holes with the sandwich, and it doesn't seem as well prepared. And then you're kind of thinking to yourself, hey, maybe he should pass this along to his son.
He hasn't been sleeping great. He's getting a little shaky hand. Okay, it hasn't been a great year for him.
I think it's time for him to pass. Another man needs to be making the sandwiches.
His car is falling apart. There's things that could be happening that could deter from the sandwich making.
I know plenty of old Italians that make sandwiches, Sean. Man,
that dude
you got
is
to pass
still the
it
dude
on.
that can make a sandwich. He could still make that sandwich. Maybe his knives are getting dull.
This got to be the best. I'm sorry, but this is the best analogy that we've ever had. It is on par with the bear that we talked about with was it Georgia that we compared to?
I think I actually compared Alabama's defense to the bear.
God. That might have been what it was. No, that's a fantastic analogy. It remains to be seen what happens with this Alabama situation.